Hey and welcome to the MX-5 guide on Circuit de Ledenon and iRacing. This track is extremely difficult and I would say it's the hardest track of the whole season, so don't be too worried when it appears like you are way off the pace, because that will be the case for everyone. You can find all lap files, which include the ghost car, on the community Discord, which is linked in the description down below, as well as the telemetry, which is also available on Garage 61. Approach the first turn on the outside of the track and aim for the upcoming inside curb. Mentally, you don't want to look at it like a turn, instead you want to see it like a straight with a bend. So stay on the throttle and turn in. When you reach the curb, then you want to lift and transition into the deceleration stage by gently tapping the brakes to slow down and control your line. After passing the first curb, you also want to blip the throttle to force a downshift into third gear, which allows you to use the engine brake to smoothly slow the car down even further. And take the second curb, and as you can see, you don't need to work that hard in this turn, because it's really just like a bend straight. Let the car do the job on its own and keep a foot on the brakes just in case you need to make small corrections. After you pass the second curb, you want to blip again and shift down into second gear while you let the car swing to the outside of the track. Now we have finally reached the turn. From this point on, you want to be patient and wait for the car to turn in further until it points towards the exit. Once you know you will hit the exit, you want to slowly engage the throttle again and point the car towards the upcoming inside curb. For a good exit, it's extremely important that you fully attack this curb. You won't receive an incident point as long as you stay with two wheels on the curb itself. It's really difficult to hit a consistent line through the first section, but somewhere around here is also the point where you want to go flat out again to accelerate towards the next corner. The track limits on this track allow you to cut almost every corner, so make sure you abuse them to save some valuable time. On your way into the braking zone of the next turn, you can align the orange marker on the wheel with the white line on the track to abuse the track limits again. There aren't any great brake markers, but you can use the tire marks on the track itself. It will take some laps to get used to it, because they are very faint, but it works. Aim for a smooth entry, get back on the throttle when you reach the apex, and this is one of the rare occasions where you actually don't want to touch the curb, and after a few laps you will know why, because it will unsettle your car, you will get a bad exit, and in rare cases you might even spin. About the track limits on the exit, well, there aren't any, so feel free to use as much space as you need. As long as you don't touch the grass, you are totally fine. Drive over the white line again, and unfortunately this time there's no marker for braking, so you need to drive a few laps and develop a feeling for this turn. Brake hard, shift all the way down into first gear, and there's another thing I want to warn you about. As you can see, the racing line is really far on the right and we are braking hard into a really slow turn. So when there are people behind you, they will see it as an invitation to dive and attack. That's why you should make sure to check the mirrors before you leave the door wide open. You want to stick to the outside and turn in very late, because we are heading onto a long straight. By turning late, you will hit a later apex. This allows you to be earlier on the throttle and carry more speed onto the straight. Abuse the track limits on the exit again. This is pretty much as far as you can go. You want to keep the center of the car above the curb. Drive over the white line to get a wide entry and abuse the track limits again. Once you turn in, you want to lift by at least 50% and aim for a smooth line through the upcoming right-hander. Now comes the fun part. Get back on the throttle, and as you can see, we're aiming right for the extended area of the curb. Drive right onto the extension, because yes, you guessed right, there aren't any track limits. Use the manhole cover on the extension as marker for braking, hit the brakes hard, shift down once into second gear, and try to push the car as far to the outside as you can. Yeah, I mean, what am I supposed to say? It's ridiculous, I know, but you won't get punished for it, so you need to make use of it if you want to be quick. So get on the extension, hit the brakes hard and prepare to turn in. Here comes the tricky spot, because when you apex, you also reach the lowest point before you hit the slope. So ideally, you want to shift down into first gear to get more power onto the track and a better acceleration. I'm blipping again to make sure that I get a consistent downshift and that I keep the car stable, but this can mechanically be very difficult to pull off, especially when you are new. So when you have troubles around here with the braking, the banking, the downshift or the turn in general, then I would recommend you to stay in second gear and keep it simple. You only lose about a tenth in the uphill part by doing so. No track limits, as usual, all the space on the exit is yours. Let the car swing to the outside of the track and watch out for the trees in the background. The upcoming apex will appear right underneath the second tree. Spot it and prepare to turn in towards that location. As you can see it here, I missed the apex by a few inches, which is why I will need to lift to correct my line, but ideally when you hit the apex, then you should be able to stay on the throttle while you drive towards the next braking zone. Give the brakes a soft touch when you reach the curb and prepare to countersteer, because the downshift into second can unsettle your car. This turn can be really tricky because the car is very unstable while you trail brake into the turn. That's why I would recommend you to blip again when you downshift into first, because it helps you to keep the car more stable. Overall, it's important that you stay patient around here and don't overdrive the car. Attack the curb and try to be as early on the throttle as possible to carry your speed onto the last straight. Yes, no track limits, you can pretty much ignore this turn. There's one last challenge ahead of us. Position the car on the left edge of the track and point it towards the last chicane. Aim for the last curb, hit the brakes hard before you reach it and prepare to attack it. I'm pausing here for a brief moment, just so you can see that you can use the full curb to your advantage. Use it as braking zone, stay on the brakes and prepare to shift down into first gear. For the last turn, I want to share two pieces of advice. Number one, you want to avoid the inside curb, because if you hit it, it can make you slide, which leads to a really difficult exit. And number two, when you accelerate, then I would recommend you to accelerate with roughly 80 to 90% of the throttle input first, before you fully step on the throttle again. Because sometimes, especially on old tires, it can happen that the car starts to slide, and when you accelerate with 80 or 90% pressure first, then you give yourself enough time to react. When you go flat out right away, then it can send you into a slide, so I wouldn't recommend you to do it unless you are 100% sure that you will nail a safe exit. You can use the runoff on the exit again. As long as you stay with two wheels on the curb, then you won't receive an incident point. It's a rough track, but you can do it. Let everything settle in the Cockpit Lap. I wish you all the best for the next weekend. See you next time.